One of the bigger games in college football this weekend is the Georgia Bulldogs against the Ole Miss Rebels. These are two teams that very much have their playoff hopes alive, and they're in different positions. When you look at what they come into this game with, Georgia is coming in with a little bit of disappointment, but also it looks like they're playing pretty good football overall. I think there's definitely some weaknesses in this team, which is not something that we expected from this team coming into the year, but at the same time, that's what's been really fun about college football this year. Nobody is perfect. Nobody can win every single game, especially in the SEC. We do have some undefeated teams, but they are far from flawless. And you look at Georgia, what they did to Texas, and some of the things they need to fix. This is a team that definitely has a ton of confidence, but also some things that we'll talk about later that they need to fix. Ole Miss is coming into this game with an explosive offense. Ole Miss has had the ability to make explosive plays. Their offense can put up points, but they've also shown some weaknesses. You've seen the two losses, you've seen what they've done and some of the struggles that they've had over the last few weeks, and they're going to have their hands full. This is a good football team, but playing Georgia and beating Georgia is a completely different story. Finding ways to beat the Georgia Bulldogs is going to be difficult, but that leads us to our burning questions for each team. For Georgia, it's Carson Beck going to take care of the football? That is the biggest question for Georgia over the last couple weeks. If Carson Beck takes care of the football, this is a dominant football team because he's making the right decisions. He has the arm talent to make certain throws. His decision making over the last few weeks just has not been good. And that is something that's going to limit them. And Carson Beck's acknowledged it. We don't need to harp on it, but that is the biggest question. Can he take care of the football? Because this is an Ole Miss team that if you do not take care of the football, you are giving that offense more opportunities to potentially score points, and that gives them more confidence. That allows them to stay in the game, and you do not want that. You do not want Ole Miss in this game. You do not want them to think they have a chance, and Georgia needs to put them away early. Part of that is going to have to be with what Carson Beck does with the football. That's going to be the biggest question there. For Ole Miss, the biggest question is going to be, do the Rebels have an upset in them? This is a team that every single year when we for the last few years we talked about Lane Kiffin and what he's done for his team in terms of bringing in talent from the transfer portal, recruiting. We know that he can bring the talent, but we have yet to see him win one of those bigger games against a Georgia, against an Alabama, where they win against the team that is going to compete for a national title. And if Ole Miss wants to compete for a national championship, these are the games they have to win. Also, they're sitting at 7-2. So another loss puts them out of the college football playoff. There's too many teams right now that are ready to compete for a spot and will have better resumes, better records, and probably better wins than Ole Miss will have. So a win is obviously great, but a loss essentially ends their quest to make the college football playoff, unless something weird happens, which this year has been weird. So who knows? But this is the game. You have a question of can they actually do it? Can Lane Kiffin actually pull off an upset? Can they win a big game when they need to? The biggest determining factor to me is how Ole Miss handles Georgia's defensive line. This is a defensive line that got back a healthy Michael Williams, and so far he has been wreaking havoc against everyone he's played. That is going to dictate how successful Ole Miss's offense is because if they can handle that, they are going to be just fine. Even if they're not scoring a ton of points, they're going to be efficient. They'll find ways to get the ball down the field, and that will keep them in this game. The impact players for Ole Miss, it's pretty obvious who it's going to be. Jackson Dart has to have his best game of his career. I think that it's not even going to be breaking records by any means, but he needs to be efficient. He needs to take care of the football. He needs to make the right choices. And part of that has to do with if his offensive line can give him time to make those plays. But so far this year, he has made some good decisions. He has made taking care of the football, and we know what he is capable of doing. We've seen it already. The question is going to be on some of it is on the rest of his teammates, but also this is where you are going to get pressured probably more than you've ever been pressured all season. Georgia is that good. And I don't think that Lane Kiffin's going to just ignore that. He knows what he's going up against. You are going against one of the best teams in college football, And that means that they're going to win some reps. They are going to win some battles that you don't. And some of those wins means that Jackson Dart has to make quicker decisions or make a really tough throw with pressure in his face. That is going to be the a big factor for this offense and how successful they'll be throwing the football. Now we've seen Trey Harris struggle with an injury over the last couple weeks. His status will probably dictate how confident we feel about Ole Miss. If he is good to go, then you don't really have too many concerns other than how close to 100% is he. Jordan Watkins had a huge game, obviously, this past weekend. You like to see him step up as well. This is a passing attack that is very good, but they do need Trey Harris back. Trey Harris being out makes this incredibly more difficult. And if he is good to go, then you feel better about where Ole Miss stands. The defense will have their hands full, specifically the linebackers. With how much linebackers in this day and age are asked to do, Chris Paul Jr. and Sundering Perkins are going to have their hands full trying to stop this Georgia offense, finding ways to stop the run, dropping back into coverage. You're going to be asked to do a lot, and you're facing a ton of elite talent against Georgia. So, what this defense can do also plays a big role. So, we know that the offense is going to be tested, but this defense will have their hands full as well. You just feel really good with the linebackers you have. Walter Nolan needs to have a big game. You have other players that could step up and help Ole Miss pull off this upset. The impact players for Georgia. It goes back to our burning question with can Carson Beck take care of the football? He is the biggest impact player for Georgia, one way or another. If he plays well, Georgia plays well. If he struggles, Georgia probably struggles in this game. If he can't take care of the football, which he's already had 11 interceptions so far this year. So we've seen that he has struggled taking care of the football. We've seen that at times he is not making the right decisions that could keep Ole Miss in this game. And if he plays well, then Georgia feels like they're in business. Running the football has been a lot better as of late. Trevor Etienne looks really good, and they're hoping that they can continue that as well. Defense, like I said, we talked about Michael Williams and what he can do. So far, a healthy Michael Williams is as advertised. This is a guy who we were talking about as a potential top 5 pick when we came into the season, and he is someone who is making an impact. You saw it against Texas. You've seen it in spurts this year, and now we get a healthy Michael Williams. He is going to have an opportunity to make a huge impact for this team. Dalen Everett is going to have his hands full. If Trey Harris is good to go, it doesn't matter even if he is, Jordan Watkins, you have other guys that are going to make life difficult for this secondary. And we've seen at times what a good wide receiver can do to this secondary. Now, at the same time, this is a group that has improved as the weeks have gone on. Ever since Ryan Williams did a number on this defense, the secondary has stepped up in a big way. So we will see what they're capable of doing. We will see what this group has in store, and we will see what Georgia can do in this game. Georgia is the favorite by 3 points right now, and until further notice, until Ole Miss shows us something, and a quick start probably does that. You have to get off to a quick start if you're Ole Miss. This is not a team that I think until further notice, this is not a team that is equipped to struggle early and bounce back against this type of competition. If you have the better team, which Ole Miss has been in games where they've, had struggled at times, but they figure it out because they're the most talented team, they will be the less talented team here. You cannot fall behind against Georgia. You cannot do that. Simply put, if you do, Georgia's going to run away with this game, and Ole Miss is going back to the drawing board once again. If they do get off to a good start, which if I'm Lane Kiffin, I'm pulling out some plays we haven't seen before. I'm trying to do things that throws Georgia off their game, throwing in different formations, different looks, different motions, anything you haven't seen before. Throw some of that in to keep Georgia on their toes and potentially help you stay in this game or jump out to an early lead. If you can do that, Ole Miss is in good hands. If not, Georgia wins this game. It's back to, Georgia is still the team to beat in the SEC, and Ole Miss is on the outside looking in for the playoff.